Welcome to Optima Healthcare Insurance Services Bite-Sized Learning, part of our Prevent One Excellence in Employment Practices initiative. This recording, I went to medical school to resolve employee disputes, said no doctor ever, is presented by the attorneys of WorkWise Law PC, Alexis James and Renee Noy. More information can be found about these former plaintiffs, now defense employment practice law lawyers on their website, workwiselaw.com. Please take note that these bite-sized recordings are included in your best practices goals with Optima, and we must receive an evaluation to get you credit. The link to the evaluation is in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and in your bite-sized announcement. I promise it will take you less than 30 seconds. So thank you. And with that, I'll let Alexis and Renee get started with the program. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much, Haley. Okay. So when you decided to take a career in the medical profession, you probably believed that you were entering a career of helping people and making them feel better, doing good things for the world. I think it's a safe bet to say that you didn't think one of your responsibilities was to be a babysitter of your employees. And yet, many employers find that this is exactly what they are. Employees get focused on recognition or feelings that their commitment is not matched by their colleagues. And who is getting paid what? The arguments and conflicts that take place in the office can be as trivial as Jane stole my lunch out of the refrigerator, or Stan gives me weird looks when he passes by me in the hallway. And most shocking, grown adults feel more comfortable telling on the other person to HR or to their supervisors rather than just directly confronting the person. There are many sources of conflict in the workplace, and learning how to resolve it is critically important. However, even more importantly is the ability to recognize embrace it. That alone will give employers the power to resolve it and work towards the goal of reducing conflict and having peace in the workplace.
So this webinar is going to be identifying what causes conflict in the workplace and then giving some practical tips on how to resolve it and get ahead of it before it becomes a larger legal problem. So choosing to put your head in the sand is never effective. Conflict rarely ever resolves itself without some proactive steps being taken or intervention. And for leaders that have good conflict resolution skills, this often equates to better employee retention and a healthier, happier workforce. Be aware that if an employee brings up a complaint or a concern, and then the employer starts to single that employee out as being a problematic employee, this is just going to escalate into a lot of feelings of tension and hurt and not being heard. I want to tell you about a case that I worked on the plaintiff side where a very small communication issue got blown completely out of proportion and ended in years of a lengthy employment lawsuit with multi-parties and hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent by a hospital. I represented two female janitorial staff that worked at a big hospital, and the janitorial company that had contracted with this hospital prided itself on using very fancy spreadsheets and metrics on how quickly they could turn the rooms over and ready for the next patient. Obviously, that is an important consideration for a hospital. But these janitorial staff people were very concerned with the level of cleanliness, and they were very dedicated to their work, and they brought up situations with their supervisor of things that had been overlooked. Well, this supervisor did not seem as concerned as they were and turned a blind eye to their considerations and just really focused on the timeliness of getting the rooms cleaned. So because of their commitment, they took their concerns higher up in the administration, and they bypassed. Well, this led to feelings of him being got involved, and he started to single out these two employees for everything under the sun. One employee came out of the bathroom with a cell phone in her hand, and she got written up because they're not supposed to have their cell phones. You know, just very small, petty things. And what could have taken place was a meeting between the supervisor and these employees where their concerns got addressed, and the administration, the fact that the administration got brought in should have been taken as a positive of thank you for pointing this out, we hear you, we will look into this, rather than a power grab. And so, like I said, this very small miscommunication ended up in these 2 employees being terminated. Their union did not fight the charges very well, and it ended up in lengthy litigation.
What are the reasons why conflict in the workplace exists? When you put a group of people of different backgrounds, ages, socioeconomic classes, and cultures, you're basically inviting conflict in. So, get to the next slide. There we go. By one. The first reason is poor communication. Lack of communication leads to misunderstandings either between employees or employees and their employer and their manager, or between 2 employees, 2 colleagues. Clear, concise, timely communication of information can help reduce the number and severity of the conflict. So, for example, one of our clients currently is a physical therapy office. The receptionist that was hired there was bullying the other employees on a daily basis. This was going on for months and months, and other employees in the office were very uncomfortable, and it got to the point where they didn't even want to come to work every day. But the owner just did not want to deal with it. She was there to be a physical therapist. She's trying to run her practice, see her patients. She just kept thinking it's going to get better by itself. As things escalated, the mean employee started to realize that people were starting to really not like her. She started worrying that she was going to get terminated, and it happens a lot where our clients, they call us and they want to terminate an employee, and when they're getting ready to do so, after all this time has gone by and all these problems have taken place, all of a sudden the employee gets injured, and there's some workers' compensation issue, and once that happens, the employee is very protected, and it's very difficult to terminate an employee once they're out on some sort of medical leave. So the point of this story is that had the physical therapist not put her head in the sand, and had she dealt with this and communicated to all of the employees that didn't like her, that were being bullied by her, by the bully herself, and taken the steps that are necessary to make sure that the proper communication took place, it wouldn't have escalated, and she would have been able to terminate her before she ended up getting, quote unquote, injured and taking this leave. Keeping healthy, open communication as situations arise is truly in the employer's best interest. And as we advise overall, keeping notes in all of these and having a strong, consistently applied disciplinary procedure is key to stopping the conflict before it escalates and gets out of hand.
So a second source of conflict is cultural differences. Employees are coming from different backgrounds and cultures, and when you bring them together and have them work together, often in a confined space, it can cause tension and lead to conflict, again, mostly because of misunderstandings. Again, this is why having an open dialogue and communication is so important. Simple misunderstandings, if left to sit, can lead to unnecessary tension. In many hospital settings or SNFs or clinics, one group of employees from the same race or national origin can seem like the dominant group, and the minority can feel left out, ignored, or even discriminated against. Employers need to be cognizant of the hiring choices that are made and take a step back periodically to see if in their different departments. For areas where there is less diversity, the leadership needs to be mindful of the warning signs that one group of employees may feel empowered over another. Are the employees speaking their first language and not English in front of other employees who do not speak that language? Are the employees giving each other preferential treatment in terms of when breaks are scheduled or who is offered overtime? Is one racial group being promoted? Part of resolving cultural differences in the work back and seeing where there may be an imbalance and ensuring that everyone is treated equally in terms of job opportunity and growth. Again, we saw this in a case involving primarily Nigerian a group of employees, nurses. There were a few Caucasians that worked in the department. The Nigerian employees had a very familial way of interacting with each other, and they shared food and they spoke their language in front of each other, and the Caucasian employees felt that they were being left out, and it led to feelings of not being treated equally by the management. The management was Nigerian and did not seem to heed their calls for concern that they were being treated differently. Again, this came down to miscommunication, and really had there been some group meetings where everyone's cultural differences were discussed and respect and what is expected in the workplace, those things could have eased some of the tension that was involved in this workplace, and maybe led to a different result. The third source of conflict that we're going to discuss here, and these are just four of many different sources of conflict, is poor performance. So when one employee is not performing up to the expected standard and that this is not addressed, then this will lead to tension and frustration from both employee and the employer, and this can lead to conflict. So making sure that the employees feel like they can ask their supervisors for help and knowing that training is available, and as the employer making sure that training is in fact available, this can be very helpful. And then lastly, power struggles, like we were describing in that example of the supervisor who felt like the employees that went above him had bruised his ego. Power struggles can lead to conflict in the workplace. It's extremely important for employers to maintain their authority within the organization. An employee who is given too much authority and control can end up holding the employer hostage. We have a doctor's office that we work with that has an office manager who has been with them for many years. And the doctor and his wife, who also works there, have become very reliant on this employee, but to the point where she has so much power that they are completely beholden to her. And they have difficulty taking that power away. They have ended up buying this employee a car. They've given her extremely high wages in light of what her position entails. She takes time off whenever she wants. And until they hired us to fix things, this employee was actually bringing home more money than the doctor was because of their commissions for products that are sold in the office and her pay scale. And this was insane. Yet we have seen many versions of this in our practice. So we needed to remind this doctor that, yes, this employee has been a valued member, but now things have really gotten out of whack, and all employees are replaceable. While many employers are fearful of removing an employee because of a potential claim that could be made against them, they can't go into a state of paralysis in which they suffer so much that the entire practice is down by one person's power grab. Sometimes conflict resolution means facing the fact that an employee has to leave in order for the practice to grow. So you can take steps to reduce your liability and consult with legal counsel before making a drastic decision like termination or changing someone's job responsibilities and taking away some of their power. But don't be afraid to pull the plug when it is absolutely necessary for the growth of the company. Okay, so what can employers do to reduce the conflict? Again, here are four things that an employer can do, and there are many more things that they can do as well. The first thing is to define acceptable behavior. If employees know what the guidelines are in terms of what behavior is acceptable and what the policies are, this will significantly help reduce problems that lead to conflict. Having clear policies and an updated employee handbook helps ensure that employees understand the expected behavior. Also, clearly defined job descriptions gives employees a better idea of what their roles are in the organization. Employees become frustrated when there's a very basic job description, but then as the years go on, the supervisors pile on additional tasks and duties, and when their pay is not commensurate with all of these increases in job responsibilities, it can lead to a very disgruntled employee. This can help minimize conflict as well if everything is clearly laid out and they understand what their role and expectations are. Make sure employees know who to talk to when there's any type of concern or issue. This should be clearly written out in the employee handbook, and employees should be reminded of it. We always discuss with the employee handbooks that these should be living, breathing documents, and they shouldn't just be something that goes into a drawer, never to see the light again. It should be something that's constantly reminded of to the employees and discussed, and this is a good way for them to have their rule book, and they know what is expected of them. So secondly, deal with conflict quickly. Under the law, an employer has obligations to investigate situations if it involves a complaint of discrimination or harassment. There's not the same legal obligation to handle other types of conflicts with the exception of an employee who's possibly in danger. But it's in the best interest of the company to handle any issues that get known to them in order to make sure that the conflicts don't escalate and become bigger problems. Bring the parties together when there is conflict. We don't recommend having separate conversations with the person who's complaining and the person that they're complaining against. Bring them together for a conversation, and as the leadership, you need to form the discussion where each person gets an opportunity to be heard without interrupting the other person, unless there's some kind of inappropriate language or threats being made, obviously, that you would need to that point, and then see if you can get the parties to come to a resolution themselves and a commitment as to how they're going to handle the situation in the future. Even if it's a small commitment, getting each person to how they're going to take ownership of that issue really does help resolve it in the long run. So again, we recommend facilitating difficult discussions, but worthwhile discussions so that problems do not escalate.
And then next, use conflict as an opportunity. Truly effective leaders within any organization are good at taking a conflict and using it as an opportunity to cultivate stronger team building and organizational growth. When there are differing opinions and positions, there's great opportunity for innovation and outside-the-box solutions that could end up helping the employees and the company as a whole to become better. I think a lot of people, it's just human nature to try to avoid conflict and avoid confrontation. But in a setting like an employment place, when there's so many differing issues and concerns and people are bringing up conflicts and problems all the time, it really is a good opportunity to just make the organization even better. And lastly, this is a common theme in some of our bite-sized learning, is the validation and support of the employee that's bringing forth a concern. As former plaintiffs' attorneys, we can assure you that employees that are validated and supported are not the ones running to an attorney's office. Just the act of validating the employees and making their concerns seem significant and cared about, even if it's their concern that there's no microwave in the office and they can't eat their food that they've prepared lovingly, just the act of saying, I understand and we'll look into it and thank you for bringing this forward can have a larger impact. So we never had a former employee tell us that their supervisor had validated and supported them and now they want to go after them for every dollar that they can. It just doesn't happen. As in any relationship, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or a workplace, it's just a matter of having honest discourse, letting people vent their frustrations, and then coming to some solution. So that is the end of our presentation, and thank you so much for listening. And this obviously might bring up a lot of questions or debate or conversation, which is good. That's a good thing, and that's what we hope for. If you have any questions, you can always call us. Our information is on this slide. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I thank you also for listening to this edition of Optima's Bite-Sized Learning. In order to get best practices and be entered in our Bite-Sized Learning Challenge, please click the evaluation link on the program announcement or down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and complete this 30-second evaluation. Thanks so much, Alexis and Renee. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.